listener production.
Hi, I'm Sasha Barbagat. Welcome to this episode of The Briefing. If you've been living under a rock this week, you might have missed the controversy surrounding Gina Rinehart and a portrait. Some have dubbed it Portrait Gate. Australia's richest person is not happy with how she's been depicted in a piece of art currently hanging in the National Gallery of Australia, and she's lobbying to have it removed. Someone who can empathise with Rinehart in this instance is our very own Antoinette Lattouf, and she's joining me now to talk about the relationship between art, society, and our own vanity. Hey, Antoinette.
Hi, I love that I get an intro with vanity and I'm nodding profusely. So yes, I do relate. Yes.
So as I mentioned, this has been kicking around this story this week. We've covered the Gina Rinehart portrait controversy in the headlines, but give us a quick recap.
Sure. So the mining billionaire is reportedly trying to get a portrait of herself removed from the National Gallery. And what's so interesting about this is that her attempts to have it removed because she doesn't like that she looks like a deer in headlights with four chins is that it's actually sparked national and international attention. So it features Rinehart as part of an artwork with 21 other Australians, notable Australians. And the artist who created this series is award-winning Arunte artist Vincent Namatjira. Now, he has won the Archibald in the past, and his style is like a caricature. It's satirical, and it's currently exhibited at the National Gallery of Australia. But Rinehart wants it removed, and she is using all the power that she can. That includes complaints from associates of her company, that's Hancock Prospecting, athletes, Swimming Australia, who she sponsors. As a result of the campaign, another portrait has surfaced, also by the same artist, which she has also requested to be removed. So originally we only knew that it was one portrait, and now through this fuss and her not liking the look of it, we know that there is another portrait by the same artist that she doesn't like, and she's like, take it down.
Yeah, so this exhibition, because I've gone and had a look at what else is included by Namatjira. ScoMo, Kathy Freeman, the King,
Queen Elizabeth, Adam Goods.
Yeah, and they're all painted in that same style.
Yes.
So I don't think she was being singled out in this instance. It was a piece of art as part of an exhibition. But you can kind of empathise with her, can't you, Antoinette?
I can. Sadly, I can't empathise with her bank balance because we are a little bit different there. But we do, Gina Rinehart and I share a few things. I sat for my portrait to be drawn or painted for the Archibalds, and that's being entered and judged at the moment. At the beginning, I was like, oh, wow, this is, it's quite lovely to be deemed worthy of your portrait painted. And so I accepted the invitation from artist Dean Brown. He's a former finalist of the Archibald. And when he sent me the finished product, I was like, oh, man, you made me look like a suicidal witch. I said to him, he's like, oh, I'd be so honoured if you would sit for me. I was like, yeah, cool, bro, just make me look hot. Like I literally told him, make me look hot.
Never trust an artist, okay?
And then when I get it back, it's like emo, sad girl, millennial sad girl, and I hate it.
I have printed it off and it is with us in studio right now.
Honestly, what do you see?
So I understand where you're going with this. I think it's a great portrait, by the way, as in the artistic merit of it tick. Like
blah, blah, blah.
I think
very
it looks
arty.
Great.
Yeah.
But I can understand why you think you look like a suicidal witch.
Yes.
You've got your head in your hands. You kind of look like you're like really frowning, but you're like gazing up under your eyebrows, kind of like, help me. Like that's kind of the vibe I get from it. But like I said, I still think it's a great piece of art. But I understand why you feel a certain way.
Yeah, and I think particularly as women, you're quite self-conscious about your portrayal in the public eye. Women, their outfits, everything they say, everything they do, everything they don't do gets picked apart. And this is just another iteration of how it's difficult to be a woman in the public eye. I think it's important to note that I didn't have any sporting bodies lobbying any art gallery or artist to have it removed. But the National Gallery of Australia has pushed back at Rinehart's campaign, saying it has no plans to remove the portrait. And it says, the National Gallery welcomes the public having a dialogue on our collection and displays. If anything, I reckon more people are going to go and check out this exhibition.
Yeah. I guess my question then is, and I'm asking you because you're kind of going through a similar experience to Rinehart. You understand, though, it's not like it's a portrayal. It's not supposed to represent who you are and what you necessarily look like when I sit here and look at you. So tell us how that feels with kind of having people say, but it's just art. And you're like, but. Like,
I know, yeah. Look, it is difficult when you can't control your own image, particularly when we're so used to curating what we look like online. With excessive use of the Paris filter. I did write back jokingly and say, could you put the Paris Instagram filter on this?
That's the best one.
My lines look really harsh on my face.
Yeah.
But it's important to know, obviously, it's not photography, which one would expect to have more of a likeness. And lightning can do wonderful things in a studio. This is a caricature and satirical in style, the one of Gina Rinehart. So it's meant to be exaggerated, if not in some ways grotesque when it comes to her features. So I don't profess to be an art critic or anything, but I think the general public would have the same understanding that I do, that art is very subjective.
Yeah.
Often the artwork says more about the artist and their style than it does about the subject. And in my case, Dean Brown, all his sketches are black and white. They're very angular, sort of angular edges, harsh strokes, very contrasting tones. So it is confronting, and you're never going to look like Australia's Next Top Model in something that he produces.
Yeah. Look, you and Gina aren't the first to feel some sort of way about portraiture. One that comes to mind is Winston Churchill. And the only reason I know this is because it's depicted in The Crown, where he has this portrait painted of him and he looks like an old man, and he hates it because he's so vain.
Yes.
And he views himself as the war hero that he once was.
But he was an old man. But yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was realistic, but he hated that portrayal of him. Talk us through some of the other people in history who have gone to great lengths to destroy portraits of themselves.
Yeah, well, history is riddled with examples of prominent people having beefs with their paintings, but also having beefs with those holding the paintbrush. And I do love that you get some of your art history from The Crown. So in the 19th century, Claude Monet painted his brother Leon, and he hated the canvas so much that he locked it in the attic. It only re-emerged some 150 years later. It was discovered there. Germaine Greer, she was drawn and she saw the first kind of drafts or the first iteration, and she hated it so much that she refused to sit in for the completion of it. So the artist had to get a stand-in. And while Greer may have hated the painting, obviously the art market had a different opinion because it sold just a couple of years ago for a little over $1.2 million.
Yeah, wow. Look, the other interesting aspect of portraiture is the royals. Now, this has been going on since the royals of all iterations began. Someone's come in to paint this portrait. And you notice in particularly historical portraits, ones from hundreds of years ago, you know, they're painted perhaps in a more flattering light than what people would have seen of these royal leaders. They might be thinner or better looking, or there might be an air of power or indestructibility that's portrayed in this art, which effectively alters history and how future generations will look upon these people.
Yep.
What do you think a portrait should represent, and should it be accurate?
Look, I think it depends on the audience and it depends on the intention. So an independent artist can do whatever the hell they like, really, because art's meant to push boundaries and to be provocative. And I think you need to point out the difference between a commissioned artwork in which a royal family or a residing president or prime minister commissions an artist to come in. That has a very different purpose. But I liken it to journalism and commentary and entertainment, which is work that I do across. So is it satire? You know, is your intention satire, sending something up to make people laugh and think? Is it straight journalism where you stick to facts, opinions and realism and the reality? Or is it commentary where you weave your personal thoughts in? All of these are very legitimate. You just need to be clear on what your medium is and honest with your audience. So in my case, I was asked to sit. I didn't commission it. I really have no artistic control.
Yeah.
I sit there, whatever they produce, they produce. Gina Rinehart didn't commission it, but she also wasn't asked to sit. The artist just drew her from the myriad of images in the public domain. He used a couple of photographs. She has no control over her depiction unless she commissioned it, in which case she could say, I want my money back.
Yeah. Look, the issue here, I think, with Gina is the fact that she's drawn more attention to it by trying to hide it. It's been talked about. We're talking about it right now.
Yes.
But it also got picked up by US late-night talk show host Stephen Colbert. Let's have a listen.
In news from Down Under, a billionaire has called for the removal of an unflattering portrait of her from the National Gallery of Australia. The woman in question is a controversial Australian mining billionaire named Gina Rinehart, seen here. But, I mean, come on, how unflattering could this portrait possibly... Okay, I gotta say, I'm no art expert, but in this portrait, I believe the artist really captured her expression at the moment she saw this portrait.
Yeah, so you hear him there, the image is flashed up on the screen and he goes, oh, I see.
The best thing about the portrait is it reeks of, I want to speak to the manager of the art gallery.
Yeah.
Like, it's so like Karen Gina.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think she's regretting the decision to try and fight to have it removed?
I mean, I think she should be. If the idea was to have less eyeballs on it, then it comes back to intent. Well, then it's had the reverse effect. In fact, it's had the Streisand effect.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, then what's your advice to Gina? You've been in this situation. You're in this situation right now. You're not fighting to have it removed from the Archibald exhibit.
Yes.
What would you say to Gina?
I did consider, though, burning the studio where the... I considered a whole bunch of things. I considered slashing the artist's tyres. I've told him all of these things too. They weren't things I did in my mind because I often don't keep my thoughts to myself. But I am not going to become an arsonist and I'm not going to burn it. I would never thought I would give this advice in my life. And I would say to Gina, maybe be a bit more like a British royal when it comes to portraits, because the British royal family has historically been very forgiving of portraits and has the sophistication to know it's futile to protest a likeness. Or the other thing you could do, if royalty is not your thing, try and find the humour in it. Like, that's what I tried to do. I wrote an op-ed about it. I outed this awful portrait of myself, which many people probably would never have seen. I would go and take a selfie with it, with even more double chins in the angle of that photo and say, oh, Vincent, you left some chins out. But that's me. But I doubt she'll ever take advice from me because I have $370 in my bank account and she has $376 billion. But that's what I would do. That is what I would do.
I'm sure she'll appreciate your thoughts. But in my opinion, as someone who does not have a portrait painted of them, it is such an honour to have something painted of you. So maybe just be grateful, guys. #grateful.
#grateful. Yeah, fair enough. It is true. Many people won't have their portrait, painted, but I just don't think a mining billionaire is like in the business of gratitude. She could commission as much artwork as she likes.
Yeah.
Will it be exhibited? Probably not. Will anybody care? Probably not.
Exactly.
But if she really wants something that looks great of her, she could either get that painted or use the Paris filter on Instagram.
Words to live by. Antoinette, thank you. And thank you for listening to today's briefing. That is all for this episode. A reminder, we put out full eps of our weekend briefing chats on YouTube. Search Listener Newsroom to see them. We're also on TikTok. That's at Listener Newsroom, and on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. And if you liked this ep, why not share it with someone you think might enjoy it too? I'm Sasha Barbagat. See you next time.